Here in our church, halfway down on the Blessed Mother's side here, is a window of St. Charles Borromeo, the saint whose feast we celebrate today. As you can see, he's holding a ciborium and a host in his hand, and he's vested as a cardinal, which is the rank he held in the church. And that window is there because our mother parish when the church was founded was St. Charles in Bridgeport on Ogden Street there. And that was the parish that my family lived in. My parents were married there. My grandparents were married there. And in 1955, Nichols was broken off of the territory of St. Charles and became its own parish, this one. And this coming Sunday, at the 11 o'clock Mass, there will be something very special, a special connection with our mother parish, and it's this. Monsignor Walsh, who is the pastor of St. Charles, gave to us last winter a pew from St. Charles that had been in the lower church there for many decades. And Jim Panulo, who's our director of parish operations and a very skilled woodworker, refinished the pew and cut it down so it's exactly as wide as that plate glass window. So on Sunday, it will be placed on the other side of that plate glass window, and it will become a place for people to go in and sit in peace and quiet and to pray in the chapel of the Sacred Heart. And there is a plaque on it that explains that it was given to us by St. Charles and is a link with our mother parish. Today is also the day on which my service as director of seminarians of the diocese begins. So please keep that intention in your prayers, because in the life of the church, the work of priestly formation is a work that's so far-reaching and consequential because it impacts the lives of so many people, for good or for ill. And St. Charles is a model priest. He was a priest before he was a bishop only a very short time, a matter of days or weeks. And he was a bishop for just about the whole time that he was in holy orders. And there's a wonderful book which publishes his writings and sermons in English for the first time. And the introduction begins with the striking words, "Charles Borromeo should have been part of the problem. Born into privilege as the second son of a noble Milanese family, Charles's father was a count of the Spanish crown, which at the time ruled that part of northern Italy, and his mother Margaret was from the powerful Medici family. His uncle, John Angelo Medici, would become pope. As the second son, Charles was destined for an ecclesiastical life. So at 19 years of age, he was given the abbey of Saints Gratinian and Philinus in his hometown of Verona as a benefice and made titular abbot. At 21, he graduated from the University of Pavia as a doctor in canon and civil law. Soon after, his uncle John was elected pope and took the name Pius IV. The new pontiff, who appreciated Charles's evident talent and integrity, made him a cardinal in January of 1560 at the age of 22, even before his nephew had received holy orders. 1 week later, he was named what today would be the equivalent of the Secretary of State of the Vatican. He was also made administrator of the Archdiocese of Milan, administrator of the Papal States, protector of Portugal, Belgium, Lower Germany, and the Catholic cantons of Switzerland, and papal legate to Bologna, Romagna, and the March of Ancona, among other duties. Charles was young and powerful. A clearer example of ecclesiastical nepotism would have been difficult to find. Like many ecclesiastics of the late Renaissance, he could have carved out a life of ease and relative luxury in the church. Many had done it before him. Many were doing it around him. The times were decadent, both inside and outside the church, and it had been that way for a long time. But the young man with dark hair, blue eyes, and prominently aquiline nose was different. He lived a life of great brevity. He was 46 when he died, but a life of great intensity. There are so many things that can be said about St. Charles Borromeo, but I'll confine myself only to a few. As Archbishop of Milan, one example of his charity and humility is when he saw to it that 3,000 people were fed each day from his own table for 3 months during the famine of 1571, or the way he would personally wash the feet of the pilgrims during the Jubilee year of 1576. But perhaps the most dramatic testimony of his sanctity took place during the plague of 1576, which killed over 25,000 people in Milan. At its initial outbreak, the civil government and the nobility fled the city, leaving people to fend for themselves. Borromeo assured the people that as their bishop, he would not leave, and he asked his priests to remain with him in the city with the people. He said to his priests, "We have only one life, and we should spend it for Jesus and souls, not as we wish, but at the time and in the way God wishes." His passionate appeal to the religious clergy of the city resulted in that they remained there, and more than 100 of them died. The sacrificial service and death of these heroic priests shows how deeply St. Charles's reforms had already taken place among his clergy. The Archbishop himself was in the front lines of assistance during the plague. He organized hospitals and work projects and provided for orphans. He personally took Holy Communion to thousands of the sick and dying quarantined in their homes. He organized masses to be offered in the squares and at crossroads so that people could worship from their windows and doorways. He sold off the furniture from his house to gain funds for the poor. He had the tapestries of the Archbishop's palace made into makeshift cloths for the poor to protect them during the winter. By the time the plague ended, almost nothing remained in the Archbishop's palace. When the dead could not be buried quickly enough and their bodies had to be stacked in the street outside the infirmaries and hospitals, the Archbishop, Charles Borromeo, was seen climbing up a pile of corpses to give viaticum to a man who was still conscious. Finally, on this feast day of such an eminent saint, truly eminent in the life of the Church, we ask his prayers that God will raise up holy, strong, self-sacrificial priests for the sake of his body, which is the Church. So finally, from the words of Henry Edward Manning, Cardinal and Archbishop of Westminster in the 19th century, from his English introduction to the biography of St. Charles Borromeo, he wrote, "He broke through the traditions of worldly ambition, avarice, inertia, which crushed and stifled the spiritual life of men. And he revived in the midst of a sunken age the image and the reality of the Good Shepherd, surrounded by his apostles. St. Charles Borromeo comes as a voice calling us to the greatest of our duties, the end for which all things are ordained, the care of souls for whom Christ died, and the forming and multiplying of pastors, not hirelings or worldlings, but shepherds willing to give their lives for the sheep. St. Charles Borromeo, pray for us.